Hello, you're listening to Democracy Watch on CITR 101.9 FM. We're broadcasting from the unceded traditional land of the Musqueam people, the Hunkaminam-speaking Musqueam people. I'm Alex DeBoer.
I'm Adeline Ping.
And I'm Malamdi Alanion.
And today's show will be a bit shorter than usual. Our feature is on Coalition Vancouver President Peter Labrie. Coalition Vancouver is headed by their mayoral candidate, Wei Young. You may have heard of her. She is staunchly opposed to bike lanes and wants to keep taxes low and have free parking after 8, and the rest of their platform is yet to be released. So I spoke with Peter Labrie, the president of that party, this morning and chatted about what makes this party different from the other two new civic parties who also are center or center-right. So we're going to hear that interview, and then we're going to follow up with another short interview we did with him about some controversial social media posting done by himself and mayoral candidate Wei Young. So take a listen.
For everyone here today and everyone listening at home, I have good news. In all ways and at every level, we are going to take back our city. The Vancouver that we love. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Wei Young, and I'm here to announce that I want to be mayor of the city of Vancouver.
Vancouver's Nonpartisan Association, or NPA, has been described by former board member Mike Lount as a party in full decline. Both NPA sitting board member Hector Bremner and former Conservative MP Wei Young vied for the party's leadership only to be turned away. In the wake of their departure from the NPA, two new civic parties were born: Hector's Yes Vancouver and Wei's Coalition Vancouver. Both parties see themselves as more progressive, though still fiscally conservative alternatives to the NPA. The News Collective's Alex DeBoer spoke with Coalition Vancouver's president and former NPA board member Peter Labrie about his new party and how it differs from Vancouver's other center-right options.
Well, thank you for taking the time to chat with me.
Sure, of course.
So could you start off by telling me your name and your role within Coalition Vancouver?
My name is Peter Labrie. I'm the president of Coalition Vancouver.
Excellent. And can you tell me a bit about what being the president of a civic party, or society in this case, means sort of on the day-to-day?
Well, I guess in terms of the policy, I'm also on the board, so I set the larger policy with the other board members. And I'm also involved with the process of finalizing the slate of candidates. And I also am involved with the policy, talking to strategists, and putting together the communications, basically running the party.
Mm-hmm. So as part of the board, do you have sort of more say than other board members being the president?
Well, it's quite democratic, really. I listen to everyone, and they listen to me. It's an open dialogue.
Okay. So Coalition Vancouver is technically a society, and I was wondering if you can tell our listeners briefly how that's different from being a political party.
Well, it's an entity that's used for political parties. Actually, I think that's a normal sort of an entity for a political activity. You can do it within a society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, similar to the NPA. So speaking of the NPA, I was wondering if you could tell me about your departure from the NPA. I believe you left after their November AGM. Could you tell me a bit about what happened, why you left?
Well, I actually ran for another term. I had a very short term. There was a term open for 1 year, and at the end of the year, I ran for a second term. I didn't manage to get the votes, and at that time, I was actually having some questions about the party, the policy. So to make a long story short, one, I didn't get the votes, and then I also left the party afterwards completely.
Okay. And could you tell me why you decided to leave the party?
Well, it's not just the NPA. We feel, other members of Coalition Vancouver, we don't feel the traditional parties are really doing a very good job of representing the people. So we started a whole new party.
Right. So it's not necessarily particular to the NPA.
Well, I think the NPA is kind of, I think the NPA, Vision, COPE, I don't think any of them are actually representing the interests of the people of Vancouver. So we wanted to have a party that was more inclusive, more collaborative, accountable, transparent. A party that's, for common sense and for the average person.
Okay. So I know you had originally backed Wei Young to run as a front runner for the NPA.
Right.
At what point did she leave?
Well, she was actually, it was sort of a mutual process in the sense I looked at all the candidates and she was definitely the best. For a number of reasons, she decided that, and we decided that we would be better off forming our own party, and so we struck off on our own.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for clarifying. So then how many other former NPA members have now joined Coalition Vancouver? I think a press release you had said 8. Is that correct?
Oh, those are ones that are well known, but there are hundreds more. We're actually getting members all the time. In fact, there's a very senior member that's going to be announcing very shortly, probably today or tomorrow, that he's leaving as well. So we're getting people from the NPA all the time.
I don't know if you can answer this, but are there any updates on Glenn Chernin? Will he be joining you?
I think Glenn is going to be announcing his, what he's doing in the future fairly soon. And out of respect for Glenn, that's his decision how he communicates that to the public. But Glenn's a good man, and we would certainly welcome him into our organization.
Okay, yeah. Just thought I'd ask.
Yeah.
So about a month ago, reporter Francis Beulah tweeted a quote from Mike Lount, who is, as you know, a current coalition member and a former NPA board member. And he described the NPA as being in full decline. And obviously you agreed with him on Twitter, although in response, NPA councillor George Affleck said that what Francis had tweeted was actually factually incorrect. The quote itself was factually incorrect, and that the NPA has thousands of new members. So I'm just wondering, do you know if that's true, or is Affleck misrepresenting the party, the current NPA party?
I'm not a party to their membership list right now. I know George, and I've got a lot of respect for George, and he's very loyal to the NPA. So I can't really, not having the data in front of me, I can't really comment on George's tweet. I don't comment on other people's tweets generally anyway.
I'm wondering how the NDP's new ban on corporate and union donations on municipal parties and, the cap on individual donations has sort of shaped the municipal landscape in your perspective, perhaps specifically with the NPA and with Coalition Vancouver.
Well, how's it shaped it? In the past, not that long ago, if you look at the contributions from real estate developers, for example, if you look at Vision, I think something like 70 or 74% of their donations came from, really a cluster of real estate organizations, big corporate sponsors. Similar to the NPA, we're very similar to that. I think it's over 70%. So that's over. Now you have to have basically $1,200 per school board maximum and $1,200 individually for the party. So that really limits it. It makes it much more difficult to raise large sums. You can't go to the same sources and get large sums of money. It flattens the playing field to some extent.
Yeah, and do you think that contributes to sort of the erosion of the two main parties that have held the most power in Vancouver, Vision and the NPA?
Well, it certainly makes it harder for them to raise money, but also I don't think that's the main reason, actually. I don't think their message resonates with anyone. Whether it's the NPA or whether it's Vision, the message certainly doesn't resonate with anyone. If you look at what's happening to the city, you can see that housing has more than doubled in the past decade, where salaries have increased barely 36%. Traffic is a disaster. According to TomTom, we have the worst traffic of any city in North America. It's even worse than LA. You also see that basic cost of living now, according to the economists, is the highest of any city in North America. It's also the least affordable. The city budget has grown 61% in the last decade. The debt is more than doubled to $2 billion. And though the budget has increased 61%, the population has increased around 6%. So its expenses are growing 10 times faster than the population. Homelessness is up. And young people are leaving in droves. If you look at the GB Greater Vancouver Board of Trade report, it says that our post-secondary education, the number of people that have it now has dropped to 34%. It has to be over 50 to be competitive as a knowledge center.
Right.
And also, if you look at the taxes for the city, the GB BOT rates the 20 major cities in the world, and we have the highest taxes, the single highest taxes.
Right.
So, I mean, there's so many things that don't work that we feel it's time for a party that's based on common sense.
Right. So in a response to all those problems, obviously we have Wei Young's party, your party, Coalition Vancouver, but we also have Hector Bremner's party, Yes Vancouver, who interestingly is also an ex-NPA member. And so both parties have described themselves as being centrist. And I'm wondering if you can tell us a bit more about the differences between Yes Vancouver and Coalition Vancouver.
Oh, there are lots of differences. First of all, Hector is, he's a lobbyist for a number of different organizations, and a lot of those are real estate companies. There's no question about that. We don't have any of those alliances at all. We're completely for, the people. We also, in terms of our policy, we've come out with, on a progressive weekly basis, updates, but we have a firm policy that are going to address all of the major issues. The other parties, at least I haven't seen anything nearly as firm in terms of how they're going to address the major issues. So we have the clarity, we have the people, and we don't have the legacy or we don't have any IOUs. We're not supported by big business.
Right. Okay, interesting. And so the rest of your platform and how Coalition Vancouver intends to deal with the housing crisis, when can Vancouverites expect to hear that? Yeah,
the housing is, we have some, this is an interesting topic for me, and it's actually hard for me to keep quiet on it because we have a policy. We're coming out with it very soon. It's going to be rolled out. But what I can tell you is that we have firm ideas on how to give a path to ownership for people of modest income, and particularly for millennials, the people between 18 and 35, so that they can see themselves staying in the city, having affordable rent, and having a path to ownership, being able to buy something, their own place, within a reasonable period of time. We also feel that the rental market is underdeveloped. The emphasis has been on developing high-end condominiums. We want to see a much more robust rental market so that 40-50% of the population can find reasonable accommodation in the city.
Right.
So that they can stay in the city.
And would that involve rezoning, or can you say?
Well, I can't say on rezoning except to say the rezoning, I think if you look at the data on it, the last time that there was a comprehensive review, actually I think it was done in 1994 and it was released in 1995, so there's been no attempt to update the city plan since 1995, or no comprehensive plan. So the zoning is, and actually a lot of that is dated back to the Second World War because a lot of it was left untouched. So the zoning is something that we'd have to look at, but it would have to be done in a very gentle, collaborative, progressive manner involving all the communities. There's something like 28 community associations in Vancouver. Maybe 20 of those are like super active. You would want to get all of those people and the real estate, industry and different community groups, the individuals involved in that process. Yeah, zoning is something that, with the city plan, just call it the plan, has to be reviewed. Other thing is you have to look at, and Wei Young's been really clear on this. She says there's 107. I know there's over 100 different forms that have to be, and steps that have to be taken to get approval on any project in Vancouver. And that's why our approval times are 4 times longer than our neighboring cities. It's because there's just a lot of red tape. And when that means that when you do have a good idea, it takes 3 to 4 years to bring it to fruition. So, I mean, we're looking at a lot of ideas, and we borrowed a lot of ideas from people like Patrick Condon, who's a planner out at UBC, a nice guy, and he's got some great ideas. We're looking at his, but we're pulling ideas in from everywhere.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned Patrick Condon, who was, most likely going to be the Cope mayoral candidate.
Yeah.
And I know that you've described Coalition Vancouver as being progressive and taking in ideas from the left as well. So would you say that your coming housing strategy will be an example of those maybe more progressive ideologies? Or what about the party and its platform and ideology currently can be testament to an openness to more ideologically left views?
Wow, that's a long question. We like Patrick. I like him. He's an interesting person. He's having some health issues right now, unfortunately. Yeah, we left or right. Actually, we don't think that common sense is on the left or on the right. It's just kind of in the middle. We want to put the emphasis on a collaborative, accountable, transparent type of a government. So that means that you're going to have ideas coming from everywhere. I mean, after all, it's a coalition.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The way we look at it, we're not the left, we're not the right, we're the middle. We're the common sense middle.
Right, but what specifically about the party and its platform puts you in the middle?
Well, I think in terms of, for example, real estate, we just talked about real estate. Way, for example, is very interested in looking at what we call the Vienna model of rental, which is where quite a large portion of the rental pool of the city is actually owned or controlled by the city, and it's provided at a reasonable level, a reasonable cost. Okay? That's, I guess you would consider that to be more of a progressive policy. Mm-hmm. We also want to provide more housing, which is designed for people of more modest income and people that are starting out. That's also something that's more of a Patrick Condon or a progressive idea.
Right.
And we also want to get rid of the red tape, make it easier for good ideas to come out. We also want to get the communities involved with the zoning so that now we don't have a zoning that's 23 years old. And when your zoning is as old as it is, or when your city plan is as old as it is, then you find that there are a lot of things that are being considered that just simply don't fit in because they're using a plan that's too old. We want to basically update and get everyone on the same page so they feel comfortable with the types of developments that are going to be presented in the future.
Right. So this is a very unique election. As you know, there are few incumbents running, lots of new parties, or 3 new parties, and new candidates running. And so it looks like most likely there won't be one party that holds a majority on council. So I'm wondering, how does Coalition plan to work with those of differing political views if Coalition members are elected?
I think we're going to get it. I think we're going to get a majority on council and also in parks. And at least a significant stake, if not a majority, in schools. But it is a coalition. So if we found ourselves with less than half of the seats, for example, on council, we want to be in a position where our ideas are compatible with other people and we can find partners that we can work with because it is a coalition.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I'm nearing the end of my questions.
Sure.
And you said that we can expect the rest of your platform shortly.
Well, we're releasing it. We do something pretty much every week. So we're releasing it. We work with our strategist and out releasing information every week. But we do have an overall. But essentially, the major issues that are facing Vancouver. One big issue is a thing called livability. That's basically you can put them all under the same umbrella. And what that relates to is things like transit. We want to find solutions that are based on what people need. Housing, we want to be able to provide a context where housing is more affordable on both the purchasing and on the rental side so that there are more options there. Cost of living, also we want to have more coherence and more accountability on how the money is spent because like I was saying, the debt load of the city is more than doubled. It actually has doubled under Vision. And the expenses are 61% higher than they were when they got to power, even though the population has grown a little over 6%. So those are the main things. But there's a fourth one, which is even probably the most important, but a longer-term one, is a thing called sustainability, unfortunately. And that's one thing that we've heard from some other planners, that Vancouver is becoming more and more of what they call a hedge city. A hedge city is where wealthy people from somewhere else will buy a place here because it's sort of a nice place to live. It's kind of a hedge, if you will. And that's not sustainable. We have to provide a city whereby our young, industrious people that are starting careers and starting businesses, that they can see a future, that they can stay here, that they can make their livelihoods here, develop their businesses here, they see a way. And part of that is they have to have a path to ownership. Ownership is something that's important. And the long term, that's important because sustainability means you have to have a tax base. Demographics. People have to have children. They have to have businesses. They have to have a tax base to keep the city going so that 20 years from now, we don't have a city that looks like Monaco. We want to have a city that is much more balanced and sustainable.
I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Thank you for listening. This interview was conducted and edited by Alex DeBoer, with research by Adeline Ping and Alex DeBoer. Special thanks to CITR 101.9 FM.
All right, and you're listening to Democracy Watch on CITR 101.9 FM. You just heard an interview that we did with Coalition Vancouver's president, Peter Labrie. Please stay tuned for more of that interview after a short break.
People are really done with politics as usual.
But then it's all about the competition.
Every Vancouverite has their own story.
The perfect time for our alternative.
Vancouver's municipal election looms, October 20th. Do you know who's running for
City Council, School Board, Parks Board?
This is a wacky municipal election, and you're going to want to stay updated. Download Seeking Office, the newest municipal elections podcast from CITR's News Collective. Find Seeking Office on iTunes and Stitcher, or wherever you download your podcasts, starting July 3rd.
When you join Balloon Club, we guarantee that you will be able to make a balloon poodle within the first day.
Here at the UBC Ant Club, we just like to talk about ants and compare ant farms. It's really cool.
Paperclip Club is all about, well, paperclips mostly.
At Blah Club, you can blah blah, blah 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 blah.
Explosion!
There's only one club worth joining at UBC, and that's CITR 101.9 FM. We got free tickets to shows, whirly pops, professional help in all types of audio engineering, passes to festivals, crazy parties, live band swag, all types of crazy people. Our programming manager rides a motorcycle. There's freestyle rapping, Nardwar the Human Serviette, the vinyl and record libraries, Discorder magazine, free studio recording, and it sure beats the hell out of Paperclip Club, which is a thing that I just made up because I work at
CITR.
So come check us out on the floor of the Student Union building. We got all types of crazy shit for you to do, or check us out online at www.citr.ca.
And we're back. Thank you for listening to CITR 101.9 FM. So next up on the show, Alex.
Yes.
I hear there's another segment coming up. That was in the interview with Peter Labrie that you did this morning. Can you tell us a bit more about that before we start?
Yeah, totally. Thanks, Adeline. Yeah, so we just heard an interview with Peter Labrie, as you said, and he talked a bit about Coalition Vancouver, which is a new civic party. The frontrunner, their mayoral candidate, Wei Young, has gained media attention by espousing her strong dislike for bike lanes and in particular saying she wants to remove 3 of them and maybe more. And so I spoke with him about what else the party stood for, and he gave a bit of a rundown on their coming housing strategy, which was interesting, and also talked a bit about why the party describes himself as centrist rather than right, since they are fiscally conservative. So essentially what happened is we did that interview, and I realized that I had left out an important topic, which I had planned to ask him initially, but to be honest, kind of chickened out of asking him. I'm going to be real with you. So, like, this morning when I was researching him, and you were researching him separately, but, like, I looked through his Twitter and I saw a few tweets that represent political views that seemed at odds with Coalition Vancouver's progressive values that they espoused. So there were a few tweets. One of them was one that I brought up with him after the interview. So about 15-20 minutes before the show started, I gave him a call and asked if he would take one last question, and he did, which was nice of him. And so I asked him about this tweet that he retweeted today and that Wei Young retweeted yesterday. And so let's go to that short interview. It's about 5 minutes, and you'll hear what this tweet is and what Peter has to say about it. Wondering about a recent retweet that says, in Vancouver, if you stay clean, study, borrow, finish university, get a job, and pay taxes, you'll be rent-evicted to Surrey. But if you're crazy, a crackhead, or a criminal, you get a free apartment in an expensive neighborhood. We call this social justice. And I noticed that you and Wei Young retweeted this. So I'm wondering if you wanted to comment on that.
No, it's a tweet from a guy called Nico. He's kind of controversial. He's out there, and he tweets stuff like that. I just thought it was interesting because it's provocative. Yeah.
Okay, because it's the images of a temporary modular home from the City of Vancouver's website.
I think that's what it is. Something down near Chinatown. Yeah.
Right. So, do you think the temporary modular homes being built by the city are too lavish?
Well, I just thought it was an interesting tweet.
Okay, I'm just wondering why you thought it was interesting.
Well, I thought it was interesting because it highlights the question of that it's difficult for basically people that are trying to get ahead in the city in terms of paying their rent and getting skills and working and paying taxes. And sometimes those people get taken for granted. They have to move further out to get by because they cannot find reasonable rental in the city.
Right.
Well, that's basically what the tweet says.
Yeah, it just seems to maybe be not very empathetic to people who might be entrenched in drug addiction and experiencing homelessness.
And I guess the tweet, the focus of the tweet was that the system wasn't very empathetic to people that were doing their best to get ahead and were taking all the steps to do so.
Okay. Well, thank you for answering that.
Yeah, it's just a tweet. We just thought it was, or I thought it was provocative.
Yeah, totally. I guess it's just interesting if Coalition Vancouver is trying to come off as a progressive party, if there are sort of like these critiques of sort of social justice values that hold, like that social housing or temporary modular housing should be built.
Well, I think it's difficult for people like yourselves going to university. You spend 4 or 5 years getting a degree, and when you graduate, it's difficult for you to earn enough money, at least at a starting level, to pay rent and do the normal things that people want to do, let alone be able to be in a position to purchase a unit or even rent a good unit. So that's one of the focuses that we're going to have going forward, and that is to provide a much broader pool of rental and a path to ownership for people that are of modest income.
Right. So I guess it's kind of a people kind of create their own lot in life type belief, like people who are homeless or experiencing drug addiction, that's sort of their choice.
Well, I mean, homelessness is a complex problem. And when there's actually a study done, I think it was 2015. If you look at the homelessness, I'm just being called into my session here. If you look at homeless, you find it's a complex situation. You have vets in there. You have people that were recently working within 2 years. It's quite a large portion of the population. Then you have people that are psychologically challenged. And you have a number of also First Nations, Indigenous people. So you have a lot of different aspects in homelessness, and there's no silver bullet. You have to look at a solution, a cocktail of different measures to deal with homelessness. The tweet is actually more about affordability for people that are trained, skilled, kind of done their best to get ahead and have difficulty getting ahead in Vancouver.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess it's just like the use of the words crazy, crackhead, and criminal that bring it into another realm.
It's a provocative tweet, and it's provocative because it provoked people to talk about it and to retweet it, and people to ask questions about it.
And yes, and it accomplished that. Well, I'll let you go. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Bye. All right, and we're back. This is Democracy Watch on CITR 101.9 FM. That's your show for today. Again, it was brief because we are working very hard on producing content for Seeking Office. There's a very exciting episode coming out soon. It is part 2 of how we got here, and it's all about Vancouver's civic government and electoral system. Do you know that Vancouver is one of the only cities in Canada that doesn't have a ward system?
What?
Do you know what a ward system is?
What?
Exactly, right? And we are one of the only cities in Canada that has parties at the local level. Huh. Did you know that?
Did not.
And why is that? And what effect does that have on the way Vancouver is run? You'll find out soon in part 2 of how we got here in Seeking Office. This episode, the interview with Peter Labrie, both parts will be also available as an episode on Seeking Office tonight or tomorrow. So you can check that out there. If you haven't already, please subscribe and rate Seeking Office 5 stars. It's available on Twitter, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. You know the spiel. This has been Democracy Watch. Goodbye from me, Alex DeBoer.
Alam Dilanian.
And Adeline Ping.
Thank you for tuning in.
Good night.
Good night.